One.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Mullen. I'm the acting chairman I'm the chairman of this hearing. I'm a member of the Milton Board of Appeals. We're here tonight on Thursday, December 10th, to open the public hearing for the comprehensive permit that's been requested at 582 Blue Hill Avenue. So this hearing has been scheduled for the purposes of discussing schedule and logistics for the hearing, which are being combined or being coordinated with several other Chapter 40B applications that are pending in front of the town. So for those who tuned in, welcome. But we're not going to be discussing any substantive matters tonight. I have a number of things that I'll go through, and obviously want to hear from the applicant, members of the town, and proceed from there. Let me first introduce to everybody my colleagues, Nicholas Gray and Frank O'Brien, both members of the Board of Appeals, who will be serving as the panel. I want to make, I have a little bit of an echo. Bev, okay. So I'm at the Milton Council on Aging with Beverly Sutton, our administrative assistant. So, but Nicholas and Frank are at their homes. Let me say up front that it could be that there'll be changes in the makeup of the panel when we get to the substantive portion of the hearing, and that's because the town is trying to coordinate several other Chapter 40Bs, and we're making sure we've got appropriate membership. So I consider that a bit of a detail, but I wanted to let people know that. Let me first, as we start the hearing, read the notice so that everybody is aware of why we're here and the details on the application. This is the legal notice that was published by the Board of Appeals. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Appeals of the Town of Milton will hold a public hearing via Zoom on December 10, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. on the application of Comprehensive Land Holdings, LLC, with respect to property located at 582 Blue Hill Avenue, Milton, Section 8, Block 8A, Lot 13/13A, Residence A, period. The initial public hearing will address only issues relating to scheduling and logistics of the hearings. The application requests a comprehensive permit pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40B, and the regulations promulgated thereunder, 760 CMR 56, to construct a 118-unit multifamily apartment building. All is therein set forth in the application and plans on file with the board and open to public inspection. As I've introduced my colleagues, let me advise everybody that this hearing is being recorded. It is being held on December 10th, which is within the 30-day time period between the initial date of the opening of the lifting of the stay that Governor Baker had put on, which was effective on December 1st. That means that this hearing will conclude not later than June 8th, 2021, and that the board's decision will be due not later than July 19th, 2021, for the purpose of compliance with the statute. I want to make a note about the record that's been assembled. We'll talk about the scheduling. I want to introduce the parties, and then I want to get into some general procedure for the hearing, and about how we will conduct this proceeding. I don't expect to take any particular questions, but I do want to hear from the applicant and perhaps from the town's representative. So just to give you a little bit of a forecast of what to expect on this hearing. First, the applicant is Joseph Tamposi, manager of 582 Blue Hill Avenue, LLC, 10 Museum Way in Cambridge. He's represented by Jesse Schomer. Is it Schomer? Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Schomer is how you pronounce my last name.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's at Regnati and Stereo, which I probably mispronounced as well. Edgewater Office Park, 401 Edgewater Place, Suite 360 in Wakefield. He's written correspondence to us, so I'm familiar with him and his role. The file on this matter has got several letters, I want to let people know that we've taken notice of the letters. I'm not going to read them substantively, but I want people to know that we are in possession of the letters. That is an electronic mail dated October 20 from Betty Brown, a letter dated October 19 from Stephen Howard, a letter dated October 20 from Beth Batson, an email dated October 26 from Mary Jane and John Walker, which was forwarded to Administrator Dennehy, along with Mr. Dennehy's reply, as well as another email from Mary Jane and John Walker dated November 11. There's an email from Mary Beth Tello dated November 30. There's an email from Robert Wright dated October 21st, forwarded to Select Board Chair Melinda Collins, along with Chair Collins' reply dated October 21st. There's an email from Patrick and Jane Mulligan dated October 20, forwarded to Select Board Chair Melinda Collins, along with her reply dated October 21st. There's an email from Angela and John Canali dated October 22. And there's a letter submitted by Beatrice Coffin, submitted by email on September 2nd. All of that correspondence is on the town's website under the tab for 582 Blue Hill Avenue and is open to public inspection. There's also the June 11, 2020 Mass Housing Project Eligibility Letter, the June 17, 2020 letter from the Board of Appeal to the applicant, on October 8, 2020, letter to the Board of Appeals from the applicant's counsel. And as I said, all of that is on the board's website. You say generally, as I said earlier, we'll be speaking about scheduling. In terms of general procedure, here's what the participants in this proceeding can expect. We want to schedule a site visit to tour the property early in the proceeding as possible. I would expect a presentation from the applicant. I'd invite during the proceeding of the various hearings that we schedule. I'm going to invite testimony from town officials and elected officials. I'll invite testimony from members of the general public. I'll invite a rebuttal from the applicant at the end of that presentation, and I'll also invite closing statements in writing to be submitted. So for any of you who are tuning in, be mindful of that general procedure. There'll be an opportunity for everybody to submit oral and written testimony to the board, and there'll be an opportunity for the applicant to issue a rebuttal to the testimony that they hear at the close of the hearing. I'm going to ask in general that statements be brief, perhaps not more than 5 minutes. But I don't want people to interpret that the board, that members of the board, that the chairman of the board, Mr. Leonard, have limited people's ability to converse and to hear the important matter that's in front of us. I do, however, want to be respectful of people's time. And I want to I'd like to ask people to try not to be repetitive and to be efficient in the use of that time. I say that in part because after the governor's emergency stay was lifted on December 1st, it became important for the town to schedule a number of public hearings on Chapter 40B applications that had been pending during the pandemic. That's placed a burden on town officials in terms of scheduling multiple hearings, meaning that there's a premium on time in order to meet the statutory requirements. To that, we have to weigh, of course, people's rights to be heard, the applicant's rights. So I don't want anybody to interpret what I'm saying as in any way limiting people's ability to speak about the important matter that's in front of us. Can I ask for those of you who are participating to be placed on mute unless I've recognized you, just because of the background noise that we're getting here? Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that anybody that has a question during this proceeding directed through the board. That is, I'm not going to permit members of the audience, either the applicant or town officials or interested parties, to have conversations outside of the context of this hearing. You direct them to the board, I'll redirect your hearing and ask for input. I'm going to ask that any lawyer who is participating in this proceeding please identify themselves and make a notice of appearance for the record. Please, just bear with me. Okay. I'm going to ask all parties, whether they be represented by counsel or not, and anybody else making an appearance, to advise whether they plan any expert testimony. I've looked at the file and I've reviewed the application. I have an idea that there could be expert testimony that will be needed here. It's also possible that the town or that the board will require a peer review, which we've done in other Chapter 30B proceedings to which I've been a part. So that's something to be mindful of as we schedule these hearings. I'm going to strive for efficiency, how to best. Just a second. I'm getting a lot of noise here, and I can't quite mute the people who aren't muted. So just bear with me. Maybe the IT people. Right. I can't do that. Okay. Okay. Just for the record, I can't mute you from here. So if you could mute yourself, for those of you who aren't muted, we would appreciate that. We're going to strive for efficiency pertaining to how best to enter the evidence through timely testimony, presentations made as a team where possible under applicable COVID-19 guidelines. By that, what I mean is, if you are presenting testimony and you have multiple people on your team presenting testimony, so for example, an architect and an engineer, I'd ask that you make that in conjunction with each other as a team. Again, recognizing the COVID-19 guidelines, only because I think that will eliminate or tend to eliminate some of the confusion that might be inherent in conducting a hearing of this importance via Zoom. We're going to keep a list of exhibits, with exhibit number 1 being the application. So I'm going to be mindful of materials submitted to the board in an orderly way. Those will be marked, made available for public inspection, and of course be part of the deliberative process. I'm going to invite an opening statement from the applicant's counsel at the appropriate time. I'm going to invite a brief statement from the town. We're going to invite a brief statement from other parties to this proceeding. I see that Select Board Member Conlon has joined us tonight. I'll invite her to make a statement if she wishes as an elected official of the town, and then we will schedule hearing dates subject to adjustment. Let me ask if anybody has any questions with what I've presented so far, or if my colleagues have anything that they want to point out at this time. Okay. Mr. Schumer, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Attorney Jesse Schomer of the Law Offices of Regnante Stereo. We're out of Wakefield, 401 Edgewater Place in Wakefield, as you said, Mr. Chair. We appreciate the board coming together on such late notice, particularly during the holidays, to open this proceeding, and we look forward to presenting this project to the board members, and we hope that this is a productive hearing and we proceed through the 180-day public hearing period and provide as much information as the board members need to rule on this matter. Mr. Chair, would you like at this time for me to provide just a general overview of what we're proposing here, or would you like that to wait for the next meeting?
You know, I think it'd be helpful, Counselor, just for the audience to just perhaps give us a couple of minutes on the applicant's vision and proposal to help set the frame.
Certainly, happy to do so. So the project that we're proposing is located at 582 Blue Hill Avenue. The owner of the property is an entity called Comprehensive Land Holdings, which is a related company to the applicant, which is 582 Blue Hill Ave LLC. This entity is owned by the Tamposi family, Jake and Joe, and their father, Steve, who have a long history of working in real estate development. The team on this project is, and we expect to have our experts from these offices. They would be DeSalle Burke Sala as the civil engineers. The architects on the project are Embark out of Boston, landscape architecture by Verdant Landscape, and traffic by MDM Transportation Consultants. Our fiscal and 40B consultant is Bob Engler from SEB LLC, and my office is legal counsel to the applicants. So as the board members may already be aware, this project was granted site approval by Mass Housing back in June. And the project that we're proposing is 118 units, and that would be 48 one-bedroom apartments, 58 two-bedroom apartments, and 12 three-bedroom apartments in 4 residential stories above a single parking level. Now, the way that the building has been designed is it's intended architecturally and design-wise to refer to the nearby residential development and to the existing mansion house that's on the site now, which is proposed to be raised in connection with this project. The way the building has been designed on the upper floors is to step it back and reduce the massing as the building moves out of the ground. And the intent of that is to create some visual interest and some articulation, both horizontally and vertically, the intent of which is to reduce the massing of the building and make it seem smaller to neighbors and people who are passing by the site. Additionally, there's a lot of landscaping that will be proposed around the site to further hide the mass of this building. And we additionally reduce the mass and the appearance of development on the site by hiding most of the parking underneath the structure in a parking garage containing 161 spaces, in addition to 15 surface spaces at the front of the site. The property will be using the existing 2 curb cuts, and it'll create a circular driveway that will allow for access around the entire building by all local fire and emergency vehicles. The traffic report that was prepared for this matter was prepared by MDM Transportation, and I invite the members and members of the public to review that carefully. It's a technical document, but the bottom line of what MDM found when they reviewed the traffic of this site based on the number of units and the location was that this project would have, and I quote, an inconsequential traffic impact on the surrounding neighborhood. And I expect that issue will come up at quite length. And so we look forward to MDM Transportation engineers being able to come in and discuss this in further detail. Now, the site itself, as some of you may be familiar, is currently developed with a large single-family mansion and a carriage house and various detached structures, and there's a garden and I believe a swimming pool on the site. The entire area is just under 4 acres. It's on a slope that slopes down towards the back of the property, but most of the development will be up towards the front and in the center of the site. There's currently, we reviewed the wetlands maps and found no wetlands to be on site, and that has been delineated by the local Conservation Commission. There's also no FEMA flood hazard zones, no areas of protected species or vernal pools in this area. There's all current public utilities available to the site. And I believe that just about covers it. Happy to answer any questions by the board members.
Let me, before I ask my colleagues if they have a question, may I ask if you could please make a notice of appearance for the board for the record? I know I have a letter in the file from you with respect to the governor's order and the scheduling of these hearings, but we would request that you'd have notice of appearance and your client and maybe name your expert panels as well. And the reason your colleagues with whom you'll be working. I know you gave them to us, but I'd like to have that because I want to begin to think about how the schedule lays out with the dates that we've set aside for the hearing. Fair enough?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Do you intend for that to be in writing, submitted after the hearing, or would you like me to do that on the record right now?
Well, after the hearing's fine. Yeah, you could send to the board an email or a letter or whatever's appropriate, whatever you prefer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know that, just a second. Let me fix my screen here. Okay. I see that Judy Barrett is here, and I know that she's been retained by the town of Milton to speak for their interest and to coordinate various testimony that'll be offered by the town in this proceeding. I wonder, Ms. Barrett, if you'd be interested in making a brief statement along the lines of what Mr. Schomer did, and just introduce yourself to the board, let people know your role, and maybe give us a little bit of an idea of what we can expect.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. My name is
Welcome.
Judy Barrett, and actually, I'm here this evening in the context of being the board's assistant. The town, through the planning department, applied to Massachusetts Housing Partnership to their Chapter 40B Technical Assistance Program to bring a consultant in to assist the board with just the managing this process, which can get quite unwieldy with 4 cases in front of you. So I'm really here to assist the board. And Mr. Chairman, I know you and I played phone tag late this afternoon, and we haven't had a chance to speak yet, but I think maybe following this hearing, we should just sort of talk about how I can best be helpful to the board, because every board I've worked with has kind of different needs. But I can be helpful to the board in any number of ways. I also know the select board may be asking me to assist them in putting together some comments about the project. It's kind of a separate role, but clearly I'm obviously working for the town. So tonight, I'm really here to help you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Ms. Barrett.
No problem.
Katie Conlon, member of the Milton Select Board, is with us. I wonder if, well, I'll invite her to make a statement if she'd like. Obviously, no obligation, but just out of respect for her as an elected official. Ms. Conlon?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you to the members of the Board of Appeals. The Chair of the Select Board, Melinda Collins, is also here tonight.
Oh, she is.
I was
don't
not-
see her. Oh, I see her now. I see her now. Okay.
I was not planning to make any statement tonight. The board may wish to speak at a future time, but I'll defer to the Chair of the Board.
Absolutely. Perfectly appropriate. Chair Collins, I didn't see you there. I see you there now. And welcome to the board. I invite you to make a statement on behalf of the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very limited in what I could say this evening because our board would need to coordinate more, and we really aren't meeting on this until the 16th. But I can say that that the board is very appreciative of the Board of Appeals efforts and looks forward to engaging in a very productive process, and is really looking forward to furthering some of the or all of the concerns that were expressed during the project eligibility application process. And I will leave it at that, just to say thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for participating tonight. So is there anybody in the audience who is perhaps be representing a group, or we can otherwise expect to be offering testimony, would like to make a brief statement?
Mr. Chair, this is Dan Hill. I'm an attorney. I represent some neighbors and abutters to this project. My clients have formed a nonprofit association called Bose Hill Neighborhood Association, and I just had a preliminary question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Actually, 2 questions. The first is, under the Chapter 40B regulations, if there are 3 or more pending 40B applications in front of a zoning board that collectively add up to more than 300 units, the board has the privilege to stay any of those, one of those proceedings, or any that exceed 300. And I'm just curious, I understand there's 4 pending applications before the zoning board, at least that's the information I have. And those 4 applications do actually add up to more than 300 units. So I'm just curious as to what the zoning board's position is on this regulation and whether you'll be staying this hearing pursuant to that reg.
Appreciate the question. I'm not in a position to answer. I don't want to speak for the chairman of the board, Mr. Leonard. He has worked very hard to get these heard and has provided us with some dates to make that possible. I will, given that you've raised the question, confer with him and advise you of the answer. But I believe the answer, at least right now, is the board does not intend to take advantage of that section of the statute.
Okay. I would urge the board to reconsider that since it's for your benefit. Other towns have used that provision in the past, and I understand what a burden it is. I serve on my own planning board, and I know it's a lot of work. But the other question
People's business, Mr. Hill.
I'm sorry?
This is the people's business. It's a privilege.
The other question I had concerns the safe harbor with the general land area minimum, and that's the 1.5% threshold. I had raised this issue back in the spring when the project eligibility application was filed, and it appeared that the town had not done the calculation or didn't feel that it was close to meeting the general land area threshold. But Milton does have a fair number of affordable units, and I'm just curious as to whether you know or the zoning board knows if those calculations have been done. And the reason I'm asking is that, as you may know, to invoke the safe harbor under that section, the general land area minimum, you have to invoke that safe harbor within 15 days of the opening of the hearing. So that's tonight.
Correct. Yep.
So I'm just curious to whether that issue has been explored at all for this application.
On a preliminary basis, it has, and I've been advised that the town does not believe that it is within the safe harbor. If that presumption would be rebutted, I would invite you to do that, because I'm mindful of the fact that would make this the board's invocation of the safe harbor due on Christmas Day. So, but my information is that it is not within the safe harbor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Can I ask you, Mr. Hill, just as I asked your colleague to submit a letter to the board indicating your appearance on whose behalf you're appearing and whether or not you believe that you'll be asking for any expert testimony as part of the proceeding of this hearing?
Sure, absolutely. And I do plan on bringing in some consultants who will probably want to weigh in on some of these issues, including traffic.
Terrific.
Thank
Thank you very much. Welcome. Can I ask if anybody else is representative of the group or otherwise wishes to be heard briefly about their interest in the matter? Now, I'm mindful of the fact that I did read that into the record that we've got several letters. So I'm not necessarily inviting people to make a general statement as to their interest in the application, but I'm interested in knowing the full extent of people who would expect to be bringing expert testimony for the board, primarily for the purpose of organizing and scheduling our hearings. Anybody wishes to be heard at this time on that matter? Okay. So let me ask my colleagues if they have any questions of the applicant or Mr. Hill.
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
O'Brien?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. So I will make this available on the website. Let me just spend a minute to lay out for you the hearing dates that we've been provided with that coincide with the availability of the town's technology and would permit us to hold an orderly hearing, getting us to be able to close the hearing not later than 180 days from today. The 180th day, as I indicated, is June 8, 2021. I'd like to try to schedule a site visit on Saturday, January 16th. My experience in a Chapter 40B hearing is that a site visit is best done early in the proceeding. Of course, we would need the cooperation of the applicant to conduct that. It would need to be done in a COVID-19 friendly way. There could be some challenges to that, but perhaps attendance would need to be limited, and perhaps we would need to ask people to indicate whether they would be in attendance. But I'd like to propose that we do that on the 16th of January, which is a Saturday. Does that sound acceptable to the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're certainly willing to cooperate with having a site view, and that date works just fine for me. I suppose the COVID-19 restrictions will present some challenges, but we'll do our best. Perhaps it would be advisable to speak with your town council in terms of what those restrictions would need to be. I believe that even if it's an outdoor gathering, there would need to be a limit on the number of people who could be present.
Yeah.
So perhaps that could be facilitated through doing a site walkthrough in shifts, as it were, just to limit the number of people who are gathered at the same place. Just throwing that out as a suggestion.
Yeah, we'll certainly review with town council. I have a feeling that those dates, that's going to be shifting, given the governor's concerns about the emergency. But for our purposes, Mr. Hill, does the January 16th work for you and your clients?
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Okay. So I propose that we would start that at 10 o'clock on Saturday, the 16th.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just out of an abundance of caution, seeing as how we have all of the parties here, given the vagaries of our New England weather, would it be advisable to set a so-called rain or snow date for, just in case, out of abundance of caution?
That's an excellent idea, Mr. O'Brien. Perhaps the following Saturday at 10. How does that sound?
That would work for me as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, I'm looking at Beverly Sutton because I want to see if there's can we email you, Bev, if people want to attend?
Anything.
Okay. So I'm going to ask people if they would like to attend the site visit on Saturday, January 16th at 10 o'clock, that they please send an email to Beverly Sutton at the town of Milton, whose email address is BSUTTON at townofmilton, all one word, .org. B Sutton, SUTTON at townofmilton.org. We'll also we'll notice the availability of that as well. But given the COVID-19 challenge, I regret to say that we'll need to either limit attendance or somehow perhaps schedule another date, an alternate date, different times, et cetera, within reason. But let's see the totality of the number of people who wish to attend, and then we'll verify that with respect to the Commonwealth's then standing order on COVID-19. The backup of that will be Saturday, January 23rd at 10 o'clock with the same rules applying. Any objections? Okay, so moved, so ordered by the chair. Okay, so the second hearing, with this being the first hearing date, the second hearing date we've been given is Tuesday, January 19. The third hearing date we've been given is Wednesday, January 20. For those of you who feel compelled to write that down, please do so. But I'll also publish a schedule on the website so that people will be advised. And then this will all be subject to notice under the open meeting law. So But I just want to notify people, we've got 14 hearing dates that have been set aside for this hearing. And if you're following along, I can't ascertain right now whether we'll need all of those hearing dates, but I would like to lock them in. And then we'll modify and adjust as we go along. So there'll be a hearing on Tuesday, January 19, a hearing on Wednesday, January 20, a hearing on Thursday, January 21. Every hearing will begin at 7 o'clock. And within reason, I'd like to call to a close each individual hearing by 10 o'clock that evening. Now, that's not to say that I intend to cut people off as the clock strikes 10, but on this aggressive schedule, I'm mindful of people's time and the fact that council and others will need time to make preparation for their own testimony. So it'll generally be 7 to 10, the 19th, 20th, and 21st. We also have Tuesday, the 26th, set aside for a hearing. We have Tuesday, February 2nd, Wednesday, February 3rd, Thursday, February 4th, set aside for hearings. We have Tuesday, February 9, Tuesday, February 16, Wednesday, February 17, Thursday, February 18, Tuesday, February 23rd, and Tuesday, March 2nd. That's a total of 14 hearing dates plus a site visit. It'll be 15 individual times we'll have an opportunity to speak on the merits of the application. Now, my intention is between now and the second hearing date on January 19th is to begin to fill this out with the expected time we may need to hear the testimony and to hear from experts. So it could be that we don't use all of those dates, but I'd like people to hold those dates for the purpose of conducting an orderly hearing. As I indicated before, if we were to close the hearing at that time, or when we close the hearing, it must close not later than June 8th. So to the extent we need additional hearing dates, we'll have to fill those in. And that will mean that the decision will be due to the town clerk 40 days following, which was July 19th. Now, I know that that feels to people like that's several months away, but I can tell you that in addition to Mr. Hill's point, in addition to this calendar, each of the other Chapter 40B applications that are proceeding in the town have similar calendars. So they've all got 10, 11, 12 hearing dates as well, and the schedule's been designed to accommodate each of the applicants. And I want to thank Mr. Leonard for putting that together. I know he's watching at home, so he'll be happy to hear my thank you. Let me ask if there's anybody, the applicant, Mr. Hill, members, Judy, members of the board, have any questions on what I just said? Anything about the dates, the hearing, or the procedure?
One question from the applicant, Mr. Chair. I presume the first hearing on the 19th would be to provide a more complete overview of the project, followed by perhaps comments from the public. And then typically what my office does, and this is obviously up to the preference of the board members, is to segment our testimony in terms of the topic and the expert who will be speaking. So for example, perhaps the date on the 20th would be devoted to site civil, and then following by site architecture on the 21st, and then landscaping, and then traffic and stormwater, and perhaps proceed in that fashion. But obviously I'll leave that up to the board.
That's exactly what we intend.
Very good.
So the general order of proceeding will be the site visit, to be followed by asking you and your team to be put on your case. But for each hearing, each individual hearing, people will have an opportunity to make comment on that, as you described. And when you offer us your letter about your various your consultant team, it might be helpful to say, I may need one night to put my site civil in, or one night to put my architectural drawings in, or one night for traffic. That will help us to fill out the schedule. And then I intend to have the schedule advise the public that on this night, this is what we can expect to hear. And I would say the same to you, Mr. Hill, as to whether or not you're planning on something very similar. So we would certainly invite you, following the applicant's presentation, to receive testimony, to hear from you and your experts. And then, of course, in addition, I expect to hear from various town officials about their expectations and testimony, as we've done in prior 40Bs. So that's exactly what we're proposing to do.
Mr. Chair, that all sounds great, and if it's possible to have, a few weeks' notice in advance of the topics, just so we can be prepared for those evenings. For example, if you're going to talk about traffic on February 2nd, it'd be good to know that, a few weeks in advance, and that way we can prepare our traffic engineer to come in and provide comments, and likewise for the other substantive issues.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but my intention is to do this in the next several days.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's not to say, Mr. Hill, that this won't be subject to modification. I think people have to understand that, but I think we owe that to the public and to the town and to the people participating in the proceeding. And but it'll all be designed around the applicant's, at least initially, around the applicant's expectation of how long it will take to offer that testimony. Fair enough?
Good.
Okay. Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Mullen, pardon me for
yeah,
interrupting. I just wanted to clarify that the town also should give you estimates of any testimony that we would like to offer as well. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
It would be extremely helpful, the nature of the testimony, from whom it's coming, and then an idea of whether or not it's a brief statement or whether you expect to be something more involved that might take perhaps the better part of the evening.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Does anybody have any other questions so my intention following this hearing is to receive letters from the applicant, from Mr. Hill, from the town itself, through the chair of the board or town administrator, or however they decide, as to the extent of the testimony we will be expected to hear during the 14 hearings that we've now scheduled preliminarily, and then to publish for everybody to see that comprehensive schedule. I want people to recognize, as I've said, that that's subject to modification, but generally we'll try to adhere to it for the purpose of being fair to everybody in this proceeding. I don't intend that I don't have any other business to do tonight, but I'll invite my colleagues or anybody else wishing to be heard from the board to make a statement should they wish. I'm going to recognize Ms. Beverly Sutton. Ms. Sutton. Well, we can't hear. You want me to relay to the?
No, whoever's going to send in
Yes.
their schedules, are they sending it to you or me?
No, all the correspondence, I think, should go to B. Sutton.
Yep.
B. Sutton at townofmilton.org. B. Sutton at townofmilton.org. I also invite people to visit the town's website and the board's website, which will be a central depository of all of this information, including a screenshot of the Zoom hearing, because I saw Ms. Sutton take a screenshot. That's how we do attendance. Mr. O'Brien,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may have your permission to make a brief statement.
please.
Thank you. Let me begin, Mr. Chairman, by thanking you for laying out a logical, comprehensive, and thoughtful schedule for this.
Welcome.
I would point out to the folks listening that your Board of Appeals is a voluntary board. So this is a significant commitment of time on the part of the chair, my colleagues on my colleague, Mr. Gray, on this board, as well as my colleagues who are serving on similar boards. We have served on the board for a number of years. We've heard a wide variety of cases, and we have heard a number of 40B cases through the years as well. I hope that the applicants and the members of the public will walk away from this evening with an understanding that we intend to be deliberative, thoughtful, have an open mind, and we will follow the requirements under the regs and the statute. Also, this board does take some measure in pride in making sure that folks who walk away from this board, whether they like the result that they've achieved or not, will feel that their case has been fairly heard and that they have been given an opportunity to have their point of view brought forward. And I can assure the applicants, the stakeholders, and other members of the town that this board will do just that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I turn it back over to you.
Well said. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate that. Anybody else wish to be heard? Okay. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may,
yes,
if you were inviting further comment from anyone other than the board members, if not, I apologize. But I did have just a couple of quick questions and
oh, please. Yep.
So the first one, and I just wanted to clarify this, goes back to a comment that you made, Mr. Chair, at the beginning of this hearing. Am I understanding you correctly that you expect to have changes in who the members of the board will be hearing this matter as this matter proceeds?
Only between now and the opening of the testimony.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that so we don't run into.
No, you're not going to. Once we lock the panel in, we're going to lock the panel in. What the issue is we want to make sure that, and this perhaps is Mr. Hill's point. We want to make sure that each of the panels is appropriately staffed and the members are appropriately assigned. And it could be between now and the date that the actual testimony begins to be received that the panel makeup may change. I just wanted to notify people of that. But once the panel is confirmed, it will not change during the entire hearing.
Okay, understood. Thank you for clarifying that.
Is that acceptable to the applicant?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you for clarifying that.
Well, thanks for the question.
Just one additional question, and I guess I would at this point invite the board members to consider the issue of whether to vote at this time to appoint peer review consultants to review this matter. In my experience, those kind of peer reviews do take a lot of time, and especially with this schedule that the board has outlined, which will be, as outlined tonight, will be concluding within approximately 4 months. I think, as you said, Mr. Chair, that time period will go by very, very quickly. So I would suggest that it may be advisable to appoint peer review tonight.
So when are you suggesting that we identify the categories of peer review and the actual peer reviewers?
I'm not sure you need to identify who exactly the peer review consultant will be, but I do think it would be helpful to vote on whether to appoint and the subject matters of peer review. Typically, we see site civil, sometimes architecture, and almost always traffic.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm a little bit at a loss to predict what peer review will be necessary without knowing the full extent of the matter.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, Ms. Barrett, yes.
I would encourage you not to try to do that tonight. I think that you want to wait until you've really opened up the process for receiving testimony, because otherwise you would just be basing those conclusions on documents that you haven't really heard yet. You know, you've opened the hearing, but there's really been no testimony. So I would think you'd want to think about this between now and your next hearing, but I don't think you should feel that you have to make those decisions tonight.
Appreciate that. I don't feel that way. I do think that traffic could be an issue here, so I think it's helpful to put it on people's people's thought processes, and why don't we take that under advisement for right now? And
Yeah.
The members want to be heard on that? Mr. Gray, Mr. O'Brien?
Chairman, I agree with you. We may very well go in the direction that the applicant is suggesting, but at the moment, I think that's premature. Though we may want to take such a vote and make such a decision relatively early in the process, but I think that doing it tonight, as we sit here, it's premature.
Thank you.
I would second Mr. O'Brien's comments, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
Mr. Gray. Okay. Fair enough.
Fair enough, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the board members' comments as well as Ms. Barrett's.
I appreciate the recommendation and I value your experience, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Mr. Schomer, you care to address to the board?
I don't believe so. Thank you. Thank you very much for hearing us again. Appreciated that you're outlining such a heavy schedule and devoting so much time to this matter. So we look, as I said, we look forward to presenting it to you and hopefully coming up with a project that works for our clients and works for the town and brings some affordable housing to Milton. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. Okay. Any other business in front of the Board of Appeals at this initial hearing? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call to a close this portion of the hearing and remind people that the next date that we will see each other pending the weather is Saturday, January 16th, 2021 at 10 o'clock at the site. It will be mandatory that people notify Beverly Sutton of their attendance at bsutton@townofmilton.org. And the rain date, snow date for that is the following Saturday. In the event that we don't meet until the following Saturday, there will be a hearing, that is hearing date number 2, on Tuesday, January 19th at 7 o'clock, right here on Zoom. Hearing is called to a close. Thank you all for your time. Bye now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good night.
You're welcome.